All right, everybody, we are back. Finally, the Boom, Buck, and Blue podcast is back recording. I know we try to do it a little bit after football season, but it usually falls apart because, me, Ryan, and Jimmy, as much as we like other sports, we are college football nuts. And so after it's over, it's hard for us to find stuff to talk about as much as we want. So with that, though, the college football season now is, 9-10 days away, something like that, which is super exciting. We've got a full season as of right now. And we'll see what COVID has to say about this. But as of right now, we've got a full slate of games. It's really, really exciting. I mean, last year we didn't get college football, which was nice to have some games. But, the Big Ten had a shortened season. Pac-12 had a shortened season. I know Oklahoma had a game or two canceled, even though we did play. Still got to play. I don't know. I think it was like 11 games, 12 games, but it just wasn't the same. And fans are going to be back, which is the big part of college football. That's why everybody loves it. It's the atmosphere. So glad to have a full college football season back. With this year, it's going to be a little different than usual. Most of the time, we'll have me and Ryan on here. Ryan's actually in the midst of moving from Colorado to Pennsylvania, so he's not here today. He's a little preoccupied, which is completely understandable. And Jimmy is, still in the military, and he's deployed. So with the time difference, can't be here to chitter chat back and forth. So he's, we're gonna have him record his thoughts on a set number of topics that we're gonna send every week. I'll play what his thoughts are, and then this week it's just gonna be me talking about it, giving my thoughts. But most times it'll be me and Ryan giving our thoughts. So we're gonna see how this goes. For anybody that knows me, I'm a pretty talkative guy, and everybody says that they could probably talk to a wall for an hour and be entertained, and we're going to find out today because I'm literally on this alone. So without further ado, we'll kind of get started. First topic, the preseason, way too early. Haven't seen a second of football this year. Thoughts on who's going to make the playoff? Jimmy, what you got, man?
Hey, folks. It's Jimmy here, just checking in from an undisclosed location in Southwest Asia. That's what we've been told to say. As many of you may know, I am in the military. I'm currently deployed. So I'm just going to give you my solo thoughts on a few things, especially with our triumphant return of our podcast. It's been entirely too long since we've been out. But first thing I'm going to cover here is just my thoughts on the preseason playoff teams. We're going to be doing college football mostly because, we love our college football. And in no particular order, and to no surprise, these teams are going to be well known. First off, I got Alabama getting back to the playoff. They did lose a lot of talent from their team, especially on offense. They lost a big chunk of their offensive production in Mac Jones and Deontay Smith. And Waddle was out most of last year, but he was a weapon. But it's Alabama. They don't replace, they just reload. So I got them winning it all in the SEC and then making it to the playoffs. Next one, I've got Oklahoma. Barring any sort of missteps or they fall victim to their annual loss to Kansas State, I do see them running roughshod in the Big 12 this year, even though Texas has got Sark. Texas, you're not back. Well, you are back to being what Texas is, which is a very talented, mediocre football team that will likely lose to Oklahoma. They, in particular, they had a massive improvement on defense last year. They jumped from 61 points allowed, ranked 61 points allowed in 2019, all the way up to 28 last year. And I only expect that to get better and better and better. And they returned 9 starters on defense. It's going to be a really good defense in the Big 12, and they already have one of the best offenses in the country. So I know, hot take, right? Next one I have Clemson. DJ Uyunglele is legit. We saw him play twice last year, and he played really well. One of them was a loss to Notre Dame, but I don't put that on him because his numbers in that game were really good. I put that more on ETN, and when ETN ended up playing against them again in the ACC championship game, he ran roughshod, and they went nuts, and they made the playoffs. Their O-line was inexperienced last year. You saw that against Ohio State's very experienced defensive line, but now they got a little bit of experience under their belt last season, and they believe they're returning all but one starter on their O-line. And again, same as the other two teams that I already read before, they don't replace, they just reload. And then last, and this may come as a surprise, I've got Ohio State as the last team in the playoff. Yes, they did lose a big chunk of their production when they lost their QB. And as of returning starters, they rank 122nd in the country because they lost Justin Fields, who basically was their offense last year. But most of that, like I said, was Fields. They still have, and in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinions, the best wide receiver core in the entire country. CJ Stroud is going to be the starting quarterback. That is my humble opinion. A lot of people's opinion. Ryan Day saying he's already starting to separate himself from the pack. It's like the worst kept secret in all of college football. CJ Stroud being the starting quarterback at Ohio State this season. And he's surrounded by a lot of good skill players. He's also being protected by an O-line that returns 3 of its starters, and much of the depth on that O-line has been in the program for a very long time, filled with 5 stars, big guys. DeJuan Jones in particular is very likely going to be being a starting right tackle, 6'8", 380 pounds, just an enormous person moving people around at his will. So that's my top 4 playoff teams. Well, the only 4 playoff teams, because the playoffs are only 4 teams right now. We're going to move on to surprise teams in the Power 5. Now, this is surprise teams who we think is going to be better, who we think is going to be not as good as most people think they're going to be. I'm going to start with the Big Ten. Last year, I picked Purdue to be a surprise team in the positive, and I was a little bit wrong on that one. So none of these are going to necessarily be perfect. But this year, I did say that team up north, the Wolverines, are rivals, that they were not going to be as good. And I was right on that one. I believe they only won 4 games last year. Oof, not good. And I don't expect them to be much better. I expect them to be a little bit better, but not much better. But my surprise team for the Big Ten this year is I've got Indiana. Indiana is currently ranked, I believe, in the top 15 in the preseason AP poll, which preseason doesn't mean dick, but it doesn't matter. I don't think they're going to be as good as a lot of people think they're going to be. Michael Penix is a quarterback who can possibly make things happen. I don't look at him as being a gigantic playmaker. He's one of those guys that can make a few plays here and there. He's got a good arm. The only problem is he gets hurt a lot. So if he can stay healthy, they could probably be on that right track, maybe stay in the top 25, maybe challenge. They're in the Big Ten East, so I don't see them beating Ohio State. But considering that they have 5 preseason top 25 teams, to include Cincinnati, who took Georgia to the wire last year in their bowl game, that's going to be a tough game. That's going to be the real test. If they can get past Cincinnati, if they can show up and be really good at Cincinnati, then I can start biting my fingernails. But at this point in time, I don't think they're going to be that great. They were ranked 20th on defense and returning 9 starters on a very good defense. But you can't win without scoring. And Penix has a history of injuries. So if he can stay healthy and stay on the field, they can probably live up to their hype. But I'm not going to, I'm not going to bet a lot of money on that one. Big 12 coming in to the season. There's a few teams that got ranked in the top preseason AP top 25. Oklahoma, obviously. They got Texas, I believe, is at 21. And I think Oklahoma State is in there as well. I'm actually going to say I don't consider Oklahoma State to be anything super special. I think it's going to be Oklahoma's show, and it's going to be Oklahoma all the way. Last year they finished 8-3. Their only losses were to OU, TCU, and Texas. And they lost their stars at the skills positions. They lost Tylan Wallace, their star wide receiver, and Chuba Hubbard, their stud of a running back. And at this point in time, it's time for Spencer Sanders to show. He's got to have to show, or otherwise they're not going to do much of anything. They got a good defense. They are returning some people on defense, so I think defensively they're going to be good. But again, like Indiana, if they can't score, if you can't score in the Big Ten, you're not going to win. Or not the Big Ten. I'm sorry, the Big 12, because that conference is all about scoring. Also, he has a history of injuries, being out, missing games because of injuries. And if he can stay on the field, very much like Indiana, then they might have a shot. But when I look at Spencer Sanders and I look at Michael Penix, I see two different quarterbacks. Michael Penix is more of a pocket passer. Spencer Sanders is more of an athletic run guy who can make a couple throws here and there. But if he doesn't really have a whole lot of people to pass to, you know, like Tylan Wallace, I should say, Oklahoma State always drafts, always recruits these big wide receivers. But we're going to have to see. And if he can't stay on the field, it could get real ugly. ACC, I got Boston College. First year under Jeff Hafley, the former Ohio State defensive coordinator. I'm sorry, second year. And the first year under Jeff Hafley, he took them, made them a winning team. They had a winning record last year, made a bowl, returned 17 starters. And overall, I don't have a whole lot to work with when it comes down to teams in the ACC. Any other team that I think will finish good is already pretty much well known. Miami, UNC, Clemson, NC State. And the rest I really don't think will be much better. So I'm kind of betting on Hafley here. I think he's going to be a little bit better. I think Boston College can possibly take out a UNC or maybe take out an NC State, if they get lucky. But I think they're going to be a little bit better. I think they're going to be a little bit more. They're not going to be an easy win anymore. And that's my opinion. Again, I'm only betting on Jeff Hafley. I don't have much else to work with. Out of the SEC, I don't think that teams that are held in high regard right now will be any worse. Alabama, Auburn. Well, Auburn's got a brand new head coach, so that might be a little bit of a rough shot. Georgia, Florida, I don't think those guys are going to be much any worse. But the team that I think that will be massively improved is Ole Miss. They finished 5-5 last year, first year under the Lane Kiffin, and they're returning 18 starters to a team that was ranked 14th in the country in scoring and third in total yards. That's nothing to scoff at in the SEC West. Those are big boy defenses in the SEC West. And then where Lane goes, offense follows. I just consider that to be more of a preview for this year. I think they're going to be able to score. They probably won't be able to defend, but if you can score in the SEC West, you got a chance at winning a game. Look at the Ole Miss Alabama game from a couple years ago. If you can score and match Alabama in scoring and match, Florida in scoring, then you got a shot at winning a game. Out of the Pac-12, I've got UCLA, and they're kind of a sleeper for a lot of people. They're returning 20 starters to a team that was ranked 20th in scoring last year. Again, I think there's going to be just as much more scoring. I think they're returning 20 starters, so they got a shot out of a weaker Pac-12. And the interesting thing is last year, they only won 3 games. But the games that they lost were by a combined 15 points total. And they didn't play as many games as the rest of the country in terms of conferences. But again, if you're losing games that close by 15 points, you've got a shot. They had a shot to win most of those games. USC, I think, was down to the wire. USC came back and won. And it was, I think it was Arizona State was another one. They got a tough road ahead. They're facing 6 preseason top 25 teams. But again, I said like before, preseason doesn't mean dick.
All right. Like what Jimmy said, with my thoughts, Big Ten, I agree with Jimmy. With Indiana, I don't know what it is about Indiana. I mean, Michael Penix Jr. is a good quarterback, and I kind of put emphasis on good. I think I'm just not sold on him. Watched the game Penn State last year, which you can't see me. I'm obviously on the computer, but I'm doing air quotes. They beat Penn State, which watched that game and that final play, and I think a lot of people will argue that on who won that game and if that was a touchdown, Ryan. But I don't think they're going to be what they were last year. I think they snuck up on a lot of teams last year because they're Indiana. Indiana really hasn't had much of a football team ever that I can remember. So I think a lot of people are going to be ready for him this year, and they're not going to catch a lot of people sleeping on them. I don't think they're going to have as good a record. I don't think they're going to be a bad football team. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think they're going to be what they were last year and have like the record that they had last year. Big 12, Jimmy had Oklahoma State. Can't really argue with that too much. He is right. They lost Chuba Hubbard, which is a fantastic running back. And they did lose Tylan Wallace, who, I mean, last year with Devontae Smith and the Alabama wide receivers and, Olave and Wilson out of Ohio State. I think Tylan Wallace, he did get hurt there at the end, but he kind of got lost in it all about how good he really was. He was a fantastic wide receiver. I think he's in Pittsburgh with the Steelers right now, and I mean, I think the Steelers got a great player out of him. So, but they did lose those two wide receivers. Are a big question mark for Oklahoma State right now. I don't really know what they're going to do in that back. They usually, I mean, I don't know what it is about Oklahoma State, but they do produce wide receivers. I mean, they've had Des Bryant, Justin Blackman, even though he decided to smoke a little bit too much weed. But, I mean, as for talent, he was just absolutely fantastic. And then Tylan Wallace, and I think there's a couple other ones that I'm missing. But they put out some pretty darn good – James Washington with the Steelers put out some pretty darn good wide receivers. Don't know who's going to step in that role this year for them. It's going to be kind of – it's kind of a mystery. So I think they'll find somebody. They do have Spencer Sanders. He has kind of been banged up. But this is the first. This is gonna be like the first year that Spencer Sanders has had a full spring. He is going into his junior year for true junior. Sorry. After his freshman year was kind of the COVID situation. Didn't know what's going to happen. Like, they didn't have like a full spring in that, and then coming out of last year, it's still kind of a little funky on what's going. Or this one's the first one going in from sophomore to junior year, full season. Freshman to sophomore was kind of So things I'm hearing out of Stillwater from Oklahoma, they're saying that the growth that he's had is been very, very. He's made leaps and bounds. He's doing very, very well. Big thing with him last year was his untimely turnovers. He would make some great plays, and he is fantastic on his feet when he gets up and moves. It scares the hell out of me being an Oklahoma State player that we have to face. But he would just throw these dumb passes sometimes that you're just like, who the hell are you throwing to? So if he could wrap that up, make a couple more smarter plays, then I think he's going to have a really good year. As for running back, they did lose Chuba Hubbard, which is obviously a bummer. He is a very, very good running back. If you didn't see him, I think one of his first touches in his NFL, I know it's preseason, but I think he took it like 68 yards or something. He's fast, he's a big running back. Liked him a lot. Oklahoma State running back wise, that's another one that going to be putting some people out there that not really sure how good they're going to be. So they do have a bunch of questions on the offensive end. Their defense is going to be very good. It was very good last year. They're going to be very good this year. Their offense, not too worried about it. Like I said, they oh my God, Mike Gundy, Mullet Man. He is, he's always has great offense. He's a great offensive mind. He's put some great people. So I'm not too worried about their offense. They have some questions that kind of depend on how good they can be. As for their defense, like I said, there could be fantastic. Name for people outside of Oklahoma, if you don't know it, Trace Ford. He's a defensive end for Oklahoma State, and he is an absolute menace out of Edmond, Oklahoma. He is fun to watch. So if you get a chance to watch Oklahoma State, watch them. So my team out of the Big 12 that I'm kind of just, again, I'm not saying, people, that this team's going to be bad by any means. But mine is Iowa State. Now, before all you guys flip over your tape, they're like, oh, they're great for what? I don't think they're the 7th best team in the country. They're very good. They brought back a lot this year. I mean, Brock Purdy is a very good quarterback. Seems like he hasn't progressed as much. I think Jimmy and I have talked about it a little bit. Like, coming out as a freshman, everybody's like, holy shit, like this guy as a freshman's already doing this. And then played well, but not like blowing your mind. Like you think he might be able to after how he did his freshman year and sophomore year. But still a very good quarterback, and I mean he could lead the team very well. Brees Hall could be the best running back in the country, easily. I mean, big running back, never goes down on first contact. Only a junior, I think. Yeah, last year he ran for almost 1,600 yards and 21 touchdowns, averaging just under 6 yards a carry. He is an absolute menace. The reason, and also another name, and I got to throw him out there because he is from Norman. Even though he went to Iowa State, which I'm not going to try to hold that against him too much. Charlie Kohler is the tight end out of Iowa State, 6'6", 260. Had 600 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns last year, averaging about 13, 14 yards a catch. He's really, really good, moves very well. So he's a matchup nightmare for safeties. So very good there. Defensively, they got good players. I just kind of like the Indiana thing. Iowa State has been better the last couple of years. As Jimmy knows, I do have a man crush on Matt Campbell, their coach, for good reason. He is a fantastic coach. But they were still Iowa State. They hadn't made a Big 12 championship. You know, they beat Oklahoma and Norman and whatnot, but I think once or twice actually. But they just didn't put a whole season. They did last year. They had a great season. They brought everybody back. So now they're going to get everybody's best shot. I mean, obviously they're not going to sneak up on Oklahoma, and they got. Looking at the sorry, I'm trying to pull up their schedule real quick. They got Oklahoma at home second last week, which is good. But they have they're in Norman. Yeah, they do have Oklahoma State at home and Texas at home. But I think Baylor's going to be much improved. They do have Iowa, which Iowa is a good team this year. I don't think they're fantastic, but I think they're a very formidable team, and it just seems like Iowa always beats Iowa State. I don't know what it is. It's just one of those rivalries that seems to happen. So, but they're going to get Iowa's best punch. They're going to get Baylor's best punch. They're going to get Oklahoma State's, Texas, OU, TCU is going to be a lot better than they have been the last couple of years. They've got some very good team players on offense and defense, so they're going to be much improved. And people are going to go out and try to knock them off. And Iowa State's never had that before, so I think that they might get caught once or twice. Like there's people talking about the Big 12 has a chance to possibly get 2 teams in the college football playoff with Oklahoma and Iowa State. I just don't see that happening with Iowa State. I think they lose to Oklahoma, and I think there's a game or 2 in there also that they lose and end up with possibly 3 losses on the season, maybe even 4, kind of depending on how the Iowa game goes. So I still think they'll be a very good football team. You got to come to play when you go play them, but I think that they're going to get either they're going to get caught sleeping because now they're the big dog, or some teams are just going to throw a haymaker and land it and knock off Iowa State. So that's my team for the Big 12. ACC, Jimmy had Boston College, not going to lie. Don't know much about Boston College, so can't really argue that one. So I kind of got 2 here. Kind of hinted at one a little bit earlier. So, but first, this one's a little bit of a homer pick, so if you guys didn't know, I graduated with my master's from Georgia Tech this past year. So for a team that I think is going to be better than they were last year, I'm going with Georgia Tech. Not only am I going that because it's not just a homer pick. I do think they are going to be better. Georgia Tech, last year was their first year not running the triple option, but they still had triple option players, and the players that they didn't have that were they were trying to go more to a pro style offense were all true freshmen. So they did play a lot of true freshmen last year, which they got some great experience playing. Don't get me wrong, I don't think they're going to be world beaters. I don't think they're going to go out there competing for the ACC title, but I think they won 2 or 3 games last year, and I think they could possibly get up in the 5, 6, maybe even 7-win seasons. There's a couple guys. One, I don't know why you would watch Georgia Tech, but if they're on TV ever, their running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. He is fun. He is lightning in a bottle. He's the running back as a true freshman. He averaged 110 yards from scrimmage, and every so this is a little fact for you, a little math. I'm sorry, but so once out of every 5 times he touched the ball, it was either a 12-yard run or longer, or a 16-yard catch or longer. So if you gave him the ball 5 times, one of those was going for a 12-yard run or a 16-yard pass. Big play. Um, so he's real fun. I think the other thing was like he made a missed tackle on every other run, and that was the highest rate except for Carter out of North Carolina. So he's real fun. Could be sophomore. Looking forward what he do, and then also like at the same time, their offensive line is a lot better. Jeff Sims was a true freshman starting quarterback. He was a 4-star, number 10 dual threat quarterback. Started last year, and he looked like a true freshman. That had a bad offensive line. He showed some sparks, but he also made some stupid mistakes, and I think he's going to be a lot better. So again, don't think Georgia Tech's going to be world beaters or anything like that, but I think they are going to be better and probably hopefully get up there to 5-6 wins this season. As for the not as good, and this is one I kind of hinted at earlier, I'm going to go with Clemson on this one. DJ sorry, Jimmy can say his last name. I'm still not going to try to butcher it. He is real deal. We saw him step in for Trevor Lawrence last year, and granted they did lose the game against Notre Dame. However, I think he threw for like 350 yards or some crazy thing and looked good. He is real deal. They did lose Travis Etienne. They do have some good running backs out there that will, I'm sure they'll produce. This Clemson, they recruit very well. Big wild card on them is Justin Ross, coming back from a very serious injury. I think it was either his neck or back. I can't remember. That sat him out all last year. When he is healthy, he is, no offense to Jimmy and the Ohio State wide receivers, but when Justin Ross is 100%, he is probably the best wide receiver in the country. He is unfreaking believable. The question is, coming off this injury, can he go back to his how he used to be? Is he as good as he used to be? We don't know, and that's a big question mark on the offensive end. And the big thing for me, last time that we saw Clemson was in the semifinal game against Ohio State, and that secondary got torched. Absolutely fucking torched. So with that, you would think, no. Clemson is walking out all of the 4 same defensive backs. Same 2 safeties, same 2 cornerbacks that started against Ohio State. They got absolutely torched. They're not making any changes. That blows my mind. Like, they just got exploited in weeds. They got a year under their belt. I'm sure they'll be better. They'll be progressed. But Ohio State showed a weakness on Clemson that there are some teams that can definitely exploit that. Obviously, Georgia with JT Daniels, who's a very good quarterback. Sam Howell, who is one of the Heisman favorites, has an absolute freaking tank cannon for an arm that could exploit with a deep ball. Derek King out of Miami, he is a very good quarterback. They could beat him on the deep ball. Mackenzie Melton is now at Florida State as a quarterback. Could exploit him with a deep ball. So I think the guys are going to be better, but that is a big weakness that's going to be very interesting to see how the ACC teams attack that. And because the big juggernaut that is the Clemson Tigers that have just ruled the roost of the ACC for a while now. Can they stay on top? I mean, they've been there for a while, and Jimmy and I have talked for a long time about who's going to be the team that's going to step up and finally, compete with them. And North Carolina, Mac Brown's been doing a fantastic job. That we've been talking about them for a while. Miami is doing a very good job. I think Mackenzie Melton at Florida State's going to be interesting if he could help turn that program around. They were obviously fantastic. Jimbo Fisher left that team as an absolute dumpster fire. But yeah, so that's one of the teams that I really I mean, the Clemson could go undefeated. They could beat Georgia. They could be undefeated, and they could. And I wouldn't be completely surprised, obviously. But at the same time, I'm interested to see how that secondary plays out. That's something I'm definitely going to be watching this year. So moving on with the Pac-12, Jimmy picked UCLA as a team that could be better, and I could possibly see that. Doyle Thompson Robinson, I think is his name, the quarterback. He's been starting since a freshman. It's with Chip Kelly. He shows flashes. If he can just pull it all together, then he is a very, very good quarterback when he plays right. And they brought back 20 starters. That's a ton. Mine on this one is I'm going to go with not as good as expected. And I'm going to say the whole goddamn conference. The Pac-12 has 5 teams. I know it's the preseason poll, and we've talked about the preseason poll. It doesn't mean shit. I know it doesn't. And I'm going by the AP poll, not the coaches poll. But the Pac-12 has 5 teams in the preseason top 25. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, is this real? You know how many teams the SEC has? Granted, they have a lot more top heavy with teams up there, but do you know how many they have? 5, the same number. The Big Ten. Do you know how many teams they have in the top 25? 5, the same number. You're telling me that the Pac-12 is just as good as the Big Ten or the fucking SEC? You're high as a goddamn kite. I do think they have some teams that could be decent. I think USC has a chance to be decent. Well, I don't know about Oregon. They are going to be starting a new quarterback. They do have the freak of nature Thibodeau as the defensive end. We're going to learn a lot about them. I think it's week 2. They play Ohio State, which we'll talk about that game. Obviously, it comes. I don't see it boding very well for Oregon. And then, Arizona State with Jaden Daniels is possible. Utah's decent. But there's just not anybody that just screams like, okay, yeah, this team's awesome. Like, this is a team to watch out for. So, yeah, I just got the whole Pac-12 is low. Get out of here with that. I mean, in Washington, I think preseason is ranked 20. I couldn't name you a single player on Washington. I really couldn't. So, Pac-12, get out of here. That's fine. SEC, Jimmy has Ole Miss. It's hard to go against the Lane train. You could also probably go with Mike Leach there, same state. Another year under Mike Leach. I think they will improve. I want to go. So originally on this one with the SEC, I was going to go not as good, and I wanted to say Texas A&M. They lost their quarterback, lost their running back, lost a decent amount of offense. I think their defense is still going to be pretty good. I just didn't. I didn't think they're going to be as good as number. I think what are they like? Preseason rank like 6, I think, something like that. Didn't think they're going to be that right. And then I saw their schedule, and yeah, I don't think they're going to be 6th best team in the country. Good, like if you lined up all teams, are they the 6th best team? No, I don't think they are. However, I think the record's going to show it. I mean, looking at it, they start off the season Kent State, Colorado, New Mexico, Arkansas, Mississippi State. That's okay. They do play Alabama. They do have Alabama in College Station. We'll see that one. Then they go Mizzou, South Carolina, Auburn, Ole Miss. That looks like Providence as a logo. And then LSU. They play 2 ranked teams, Alabama and LSU. So I think 10-2 is very... If they don't go 10-2, they should be slapped in the face. They're probably looking more 11-1. I'm not sold on LSU this year. I do think obviously they lose to Alabama, but maybe beat LSU at the end 11-1. I don't think they're an 11-1 football team, but I think their schedule kind of says it. The team I'm actually going to go with kind of for the same reason, but on the other end, I'm going to go with Tennessee, as I think they're going to be better than people are expecting this year. Josh Heupel's there. I know a little bit of a homer because he's an ex-Oklahoma quarterback. However, they do have Joe Milton, the transfer from Michigan. We'll see what Josh Heupel can do with that. I mean, Josh Heupel has always put a good offense on the field. So I think they'll be okay offensively. And then just, again, looking at their schedule, they start off Bowling Green, Pitt at home, Tennessee Tech. That should be 3 wins. They end the season, South Alabama, Vanderbilt. That's 5 wins. Granted, they have Alabama, Georgia, Florida in that mix, which obviously are 3 losses. I don't think they're going to beat them. I'm not saying that. But then, you have Missouri, South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Kentucky in there. If they could win 2 of those 4 games, you're looking at a 7-5 football team. Now, if you look at everything that Tennessee lost this offseason and transfers, and oh my God, 7-5 would be a fantastic freaking season for Tennessee, which I think is very doable. Even 6-6, they're bowling at 6-6. So if Tennessee can get to a bowl game this year after everything they lost, I think that's going to be a great, great season for them. Yeah, okay, so that's all the Power 5. So the next topic, we have a dark horse Heisman. So, Jimmy, go for it.
Moving on to who I think a Heisman dark horse is. We all know who the Heisman preseason favorite is, Spencer Rattler. He's the betting odds to win the Heisman this year, and I don't argue with it. Kid's dynamic. It's his second year under Lincoln Riley in a system that just breeds Heisman quarterbacks. You just look at it and objectively that's true. But I've got 2 dark horse Heisman Trophy finalists here. Number 1, I got Garrett Wilson, wide receiver out of Ohio State. Now, a lot of people would think Chris Olave because he's the number 1 wide receiver, but I like Garrett Wilson a lot in this sense because they move him all up and down that line. And Devontae Smith was a 1-position guy and was returning punts as well as does Garrett Wilson. He only finished 723 yards receiving last year, but that was only over 6 games. So if you take that on average, that's good for 120 yards receiving a game and 1 touchdown per game. He had 6 total touchdowns. Now, we've got a full season coming up. And with that, it was 120 yards a game, good for 1 touchdown per game. Devontae Smith averaged 142 yards per game last year. That's about 22 yards less, which is, listen, I'm not discounting what Devontae Smith did. What he did last year was, video game numbers. I consider Garrett Wilson a possibility if there's focus on Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson is able to move around and be flexible and able to make those catches. He's got great hands. He's got a big frame. He's fast as all get. Not as fast as Olave or as fast as Devontae Smith or even Paris Campbell in the past, but he's fast enough. My other Heisman dark horse I've got is Matt Corral, quarterback out of Ole Miss. Again, where Lane goes, offense follows. Matt Corral is the beneficiary of where Lane Kiffin goes. He finished the season last year 3rd best QBR in the country behind Mac Jones and Justin Fields. That's 2 first-round quarterbacks and 2 Heisman Trophy finalists. He had 3,300 yards passing, 24 touchdowns to 14 interceptions in his 3rd year. He's going into his 4th year, 2nd year under Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin made Blake Sims into a really, really good quarterback, somebody who looked like it could possibly be an NFL quarterback. But by then it was a little bit too late. So in this sense, I could see maybe adding another 1,000 yards of passing. If he can clean up his interceptions, drop those down to single digits, and up his touchdowns by 10, he's on the board for an argument. So I got Matt Corral as my second dark horse Heisman finalist.
All right, so I know, guys, shocker. Jimmy is a dark horse. Picked an Ohio State guy. I know. Out of left field. Nobody saw that coming. No, Garrett Wilson is a very good wide receiver, and Chris Olave is as well. There's too much split there, I think, for either of them to get enough stats to be even invited to the Heisman. They're great talents, and they're a menace together. I just think there's going to be too many split receptions there to warrant a Heisman. Matt Corral out of Ole Miss, I think, is very interesting. Lane Kiffin has done very, very good with offenses. He's got another year under the belt learning that offense. I think he's definitely a guy to be on the watch for. As for mine, taking the easy ones out, obviously, because we're doing dark horse. Spencer Rattler out of Oklahoma, Sam Howell. I think Bryce Young, Alabama quarterback, even though he hasn't taken a snap. TJ, you at Clemson. I think those guys are ones that you just kind of expect to be there. Some guys that I like I talked about earlier, I like Brees Hall a lot. I don't know if he finished sixth in the Heisman last year, but wasn't invited. I think on the last Heisman ratings from Vegas, he was like the eighth or ninth best odds. So I'm calling him a kind of a dark horse. I think he has a chance. He's got the talent. I mean, but the dude ran for 1,600 yards and 21 touchdowns last year, and nobody even talked about him. Granted, we had Matt. What's his nuts? Alabama quarterback. I forgot his name off the top of my head. And then Devontae Smith, the winner, who just had video game number seasons. So I can understand why they didn't talk about him, but I think he possibly could put up some numbers that could get him in that conversation. Another person, this one's going to be, it's all going to depend on how the season falls. But Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati, the quarterback, if you haven't watched him play, watch him play. He is fun to freaking watch play. This kid can do it all. He's a great running the ball, has very, moves the ball, or moves around really, really well. I think if Cincinnati's got to go undefeated, I definitely think that. And I think, which by the way, I think is I think it's doable. Indiana is going to be a tough one, but I think they can win that one. Notre Dame's the big one. They got at Notre Dame October 2nd. That's going to be a game, and it's going to be a make or break for Ridder. If he goes out and balls out and has, he's kind of the kind of guy that can have 300 yards thrown and 100 yards rushing. If he goes out and does that against Notre Dame, then yeah, I think he's going to vault his name right up there. And then after that, it's kind of the easy schedule of the American. He can put up some pretty darn good numbers. But I think Cincinnati's going to have to be up there in the top 10 of the country for him to be considered. And then finally, Jaden Daniels out of Arizona State. We've talked about him for years. He came in as a freshman. He looked fantastic. Last year, did not make the leaps and bounds that we thought he was going to do. Maybe this year he could do it. I don't know, but I mean, he's got the talent to do it. Sorry, I had to take a little sip. Finally, last topic for college football for the day. We've got realignment thoughts. I'm sure if you guys are listening to this, you follow college football a little bit, at least. You should. Or, I don't know why you're listening to us, unless we're your only source for college football news. And if so, thank you. But yeah, a lot's happened with the Oklahoma going to Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12 to go to the SEC. College football playoff. There's this new thing that came out today about the Pac-12, ACC, and Big 10. They're forming an alliance, which I don't know what that means. They haven't really explained that yet. But let's hear what Jimmy's thoughts are on all of the realignment stuff and what's going on in college football.
Now, the boys wanted me to go ahead and give my thoughts on realignment. The scope and the shape of NCAA college football is completely changed. They've got name, image, and likeness now, which I'm not against. I'm not a gigantic fan of the big brands coming in and signing college teams and all this other kind of stuff, but I'm still going to give my thoughts, which causes for a lot of realignment. Now, for the most sense, I'm a traditionalist. I love traditions, especially in college football. That's one of the reasons why I love college football so much. I love the tradition. I don't like how a lot of the tradition, though, is now being used as being able to bring in money just to bring in money, right? The block O was the block. Sorry, not the block O. The script Ohio, which is, in my opinion, the best college football tradition in all of college football, is now is marketing. It's branding, right? And I'm not against a team using their branding, but there's really nothing I can do about it because that's what it is. So in the sense, I'm okay with the name, image, like it's night, the name, image, and likeness. I just don't like how high it can go. I got a I got a I got a thought, an idea. My idea was if a player is able to make more money than what it costs for him to go to that school, maybe his scholarship should be pulled because now he can just pay for his school. So he's on the team still. You don't lose your shot at playing on the team, but you can pay for your school because now you're making money. I'm so overall, I'm not the biggest fan, but again, there's nothing I can do about it. Um, and a part of that in bringing in more money is by creating bigger games that mean things, right? Out of conference games don't mean as much as they used to. Not during the BCS days. If you lose a single game in the BCS, there's a shot that you're probably not going to make it to the national championship game. I do like the playoffs, obviously. I'm not a big fan of how it's been implemented so far, but we can go over that a little bit later. But getting bigger games means more money. But I don't like that the smaller conferences and the smaller teams will likely suffer from all of this. MAC and Mountain West teams won't sniff the playoffs. Now, what I'm hearing of them possibly making expanding the playoffs to about 12 teams, which in my opinion is way too much. I don't like that either because you still got these big teams. You've got Alabama's, the Ohio States, the Oklahomas who are able to bring all these big gigantic names in. And for them to be able to do the one-time transfer is one thing, but the big name players aren't going to be going to Toledo. You know, Toledo's who won the MAC last year. They're not going to be going, hey, we got a 5-star, so we've got a shot. You know, Toledo's not getting 5 stars because the bigger teams are able to hand out as many of these offers as they want. My opinion, if you're going to realign, if you're going to have these bigger name games, if you're going to be expanding the playoffs, you got to protect these smaller teams as well from them to be able to make their money as a school. Otherwise, these programs are shut down. You look at UAB a couple years ago. You got to limit the amount of scholarship offers that you can hand out. And scholarship offers, which in my other opinion, if we're taking scholarships away for people, but you know, these kids can't make money while they're in high school, so they got to start off with a scholarship. But if you limit that, it kind of opens up the pool to a lot more offers to people to be able to get these bigger name kids, you know. And then for them, it's like, okay, I can go to a smaller school like Toledo, I can ball out, and then I can transfer to Alabama once Tua Tagovailoa leaves or when Bryce Young leaves to go play quarterback for them. Or I can go ball out at, you know, BGSU and then transfer to Ohio State and be a star wide receiver. You know, there's always a possibility. A lot of things are going to be needing to change. I am not a gigantic, like I said, I'm a traditionalist. I like things to go, but I know that things are changing. There's nothing I can do about it. So it's kind of like, all right, where are we going with here?
All right. So Jimmy talked a lot. He kind of touched on a lot of stuff right there. First thing I'll talk about is this whole realignment thing. You know that I am one for I do like traditions and stuff, and I grew up. You know, when I was really young, I guess showing my age, it was the Big Eight. Growing up watching the Big Eight. Basketball and football, and then obviously into the Big 12, and that's kind of where I've watched the most football is the Big 12. And you know, Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12. I mean, I'm excited because we're going to the SEC. It's some of the games that's going to come. I've got season tickets, so some of the games like Alabama's going to be coming to Norman, Georgia's going to be coming to Norman. You know, LSU is going to be coming to Norman. Like that's awesome. I'm super excited about that. And some of the games I get to go see, and games I'll get to go to. Maybe head to a game at in Tuscaloosa, go see Alabama or Athens in Georgia. I've heard Ole Miss is the place to go for a game, and they just show out. And that's definitely a place I'm going to want to go to. Death Valley can fuck off. I've heard nightmares of that place. I've heard it's great. if you're an LSU fan. But if you're a visiting fan, it's not the most pleasant of places to go. So yeah, as for Death Valley, I'm going to be very happy to watch that game from the safety of my own couch. So yeah, but we'll see when that happens. They're scheduled to do it in 2025. I don't see it lasting that long. I think if not this next year, it'll be the year after that. So either the 2022 or 2023 season, Oklahoma and Texas will be out of the Big 12. And then with this new alliance thing that I'm going to talk about here in a little bit about the ACC, Big 10, and Pac-12, I think that just kind of solidifies that the Big 12 is going away. It will be dissolved, which is sad to hear. It's like I said, it's something I grew up watching. It's a bummer, but it's kind of the way that college football is going nowadays. So this agreement, alliance that they have, so this was announced today. I'm doing this on Friday, August 20th. I don't think this actually happened today, and Jimmy didn't have a chance to comment on this, so I'd be interested to hear his thoughts on it. But they didn't really release much about it, except that there was going to be a alliance. So they didn't say what this means, or what it is. I mean, I think they're still going to have the 3 conferences, so I don't know. I've heard that they did this as a counter shot to Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. So I don't know if that means that they are not playing, like the 3 conferences, they'll play their conference games, but they'll only schedule non-conference games with each other or something like that, which, first off, if they do that, I mean, it's awesome for college football because you're going to see some awesome games. There's going to be some great matchups, but I just don't see how that's going to work, especially when, you've got rivalries that go cross-conference between the ACC specifically and the SEC. I mean, the most notable one, Florida State. So are you telling me because of this alliance that Florida State will be no more? Or Georgia Tech, which is not a big one, but I mean, in the state of Georgia, I went there, and good God, they hate each other. That rivalry is called good old-fashioned hate, and it's true. And then there is Clemson, South Carolina. Then they've been playing for, I think, like 107 years. And then I think the other one's Louisville and Kentucky, which not as big, but I mean, for the people of that state, it's a very big rivalry. So, I mean, movements has broken big rivalries before. Obviously with Nebraska, it's the first one I think about. Being an Oklahoma fan, OU Nebraska was awesome to watch. It was there's some. I mean, the game of the century was literally Oklahoma Nebraska, a long time ago, but that's what the game was called. And since they've gone to the Big Ten, they haven't played each other. We do play them this year, but it's just not the same not having it. And then also, with A&M going to the SEC, Texas and Texas A&M has not happened, which, I mean, as you guys know, I hate Texas. I'm really not a fan of the Aggies either, but they play on Thanksgiving weekend. That's a fun college football game. I know NFL usually takes over Thanksgiving, but it's fun to have a good college football game on Thanksgiving weekend. It was usually Texas A&M. It's a good game to put on. So not saying that it won't happen just because of those rivalries, because rivalries have been broken up in the past. But it'd be a bummer. Florida State is just a fun game to watch. Even when Florida's down, when Florida State was down, I watched those games. I mean, especially back in the early 2000s and in the 90s, I remember it was the trio of Florida, Miami, Florida State, and when any of them played each other, it was prime time football, and it was good to watch, and there's a lot of talent. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plans. And the other big thing, if this is true, this is total speculation. I don't know if those 3 conferences are saying that they'll only play each other. I'm just guessing. If that's the case, then what the hell happens with Notre Dame? Because the ACC, Pac-12, and Big Ten, I mean, they're going to be playing Power 5 teams every damn week, non-conference or in-conference. So why would they schedule Notre Dame? That's just adding a huge wrench and a possible loss on the schedule. Why would you do that? The SEC, vice versa, they're not going to be playing the same non-conference, but they've got the juggernaut that is the SEC schedule. I mean, granted, teams will go up and down, and in the future it could change. But right now, I mean, you could just play the SEC schedule, especially with Oklahoma and Texas added in there, and still make the college football playoff with a loss or two, just because the teams that are in there. And then the Big 12 is going away. So where does this leave Notre Dame? I hope they finally join a conference like the rest of us. That's what they need to happen. Don't be this independent, blah, blah, blah. And from what I've read and what I've heard, a lot of it has to do with money. And don't get me wrong, Notre Dame's brand, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I mean, it's probably the biggest in the country. Actually, I'd put money that's the biggest in the country. Texas is huge. Ohio State's huge. Those are both fans all over the country. But Notre Dame is just absurd on the amount of fans that they have and the brand they have. But the deal with NBC that they have, I don't know if they're going to really get it re-up, because from what I've heard, the numbers have not been producing how they have in the past. And I think a lot of that has to do with all these other conferences now have their game of the week. That I think it was the Big 12 had the morning game. I think the Big 10 had the night game, and I think SEC had the afternoon game. I think that's kind of the situation. I could be wrong. You guys can correct me. But now moving forward, I think when the SEC signs their new deal with ESPN, that they're going to have their primetime game in the afternoon kickoff. And then they have the possibility, if they have another big game, to do Saturday Night Football on ABC, which will also be an SEC game. And then on top of that, you've got the Big Ten, ACC, and Pac-12 making these powerhouse freaking matchups through all. Like, could you imagine like an Ohio State Clemson matchup, like week 2, for shits and giggles? That would be awesome. Or like a Penn State North Carolina. That would be a fun game. So if you got these games going on, are you gonna really tune into Notre Dame, Temple, or whoever the other? I don't even know who the other independents are. I mean, Notre Dame does play some good games. I mean, obviously Notre Dame, USC, but that's another rivalry that might be up in the air. Because if USC has to play the Pac-12 schedule, and then on their non-conference, the other ones are against, say, I don't know, Wisconsin out of the Big Ten and freaking like Miami out of the ACC, why the fuck would you throw Notre Dame in there? Like, what's the point? Because it's a rivalry? No, there you go. No, join a conference. Because if they join the Big Ten, then okay, yeah, now you can schedule them. They're part of the Big Ten, and if you get put in the schedule, it's part of the schedule. But Notre Dame being an independent, I think, on this could be left out in the dirt. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with them moving forward. As for the college football playoff, we're at 4, which isn't as much as I want. They've looked at going to 12, which is kind of like Jimmy said. I think 12 is too much. I think 8 probably might be the magic number with that, because maybe, well, and a lot of this is going to depend on what happens with the Big 12, if they're going to have a conference or not. Because if you have 8 teams and you have 5 Power 5 conference, the champion of all 5 go. Like, I think the champion of each Power 5 should go regardless. I don't care if you're 6-6, got lucky and won the championship. If you won it, your conference, then you have earned the right to go to the college football playoff. Now, you're probably going to go play like an Alabama, Ohio State and get the absolute piss beat out of you, but you've earned that right to get that piss beat out of you. But that also, in essence, makes the conference championship games playoff games, because you win, you move on, you lose, you go home. That's a playoff game. So, I mean, that really does add 4 or 5 more teams to the number. So I say it's 8, but it's really kind of like 13 with when you add the teams that play in all the college football or the conference champions. And also, you want to talk about like viewership. Like, most of the time when the champions come on, obviously I watch the Big 12 because, well, let's get real, it was usually Oklahoma in there. So I'd watch the Big 12 championship, and then kind of depending on which one was where, SEC is always one to watch because, it's usually Alabama, Georgia, or Florida. It's a really, really good game. Big Ten, I watch depending on who is there. Sometimes, like, on some of the Wisconsin, Ohio State, or what's the, like, 2 top 15 teams I'll watch. But some of them when the anyways, yeah, so when the if it's a Northwestern or something in there, yeah, I'm usually not watching that game. ACC usually don't watch either. Pac-12, I don't really watch those. But if you made it where the winner, like, what you put something on the stakes, like winner goes on to the college football playoff, yeah, I'm probably going to be tuning into every single game I can, because that's a lot on the line. That'd be interesting. And then after the 4 or 5 Power Conference champions, Power 5 conference champions, you have your one at-large bid for a non-Power 5. I'll give a chance for a Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, Louisiana, somebody like that to get in there and get some get the somebody else in there besides like the Power 5. Give the little guy a chance. Like, we know it's going to happen. More than likely, they're going to go in there and get the crap kicked out of them. But again, they've earned the right to go get the crap kicked out of them. Then you could have 2 at-large teams for, like, another SEC team like Georgia or A&M, or possibly a Penn State in the future. That could, or shit, I guess I could throw Oklahoma in there because they're going to be in the SEC. Get them a chance to have a couple teams in there. So I think 8's a good number. 6 might be a little low. The thing about the expanding of the playoff, and we did this last year. I forgot what the exact matchups were, but everybody always says that, oh, it's bland because the same 4 or 5 teams in there. You think adding more teams is going to, like, for some reason, not make Alabama as good as they are? Like, football, excuse me, is a lot different than, like, basketball. Basketball, obviously, March Madness is one of the greatest things. There's upsets all the time. It's one of the greatest spectacles you can have. And I'm not saying that upsets don't happen in college football, because they definitely do. But it's not as much because there's so many more players on the field. And when you're playing a team like Alabama or Clemson in the past, or some of these Ohio State teams, all 22 starters are better than the other people. When that happens, you're going to lose. It's just the way it is. Like, just because you start throwing a Cincinnati in there, or maybe a Notre Dame, or whoever, Louisiana, Coastal Carolina, it's still going to end up Alabama, in no specific order, Alabama, Oklahoma, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia. Still can end up like them with the Final Four. I mean, yeah, there'll be a couple years in there that somebody gets upset, and somebody will sneak in there. But majority of the time, it's going to be the same 4 or 5 teams. Don't think that's going to change anything. The thing that needs to change is the amount of scholarship players. That will change it. We're not going to get into it here, but yeah, you take the amount of scholarship players you could have, a team could have, from 75 down to like 55 or whatever the numbers is. Take it down by 20. That means Alabama can't keep 6 5-star running backs on their roster because they don't have the scholarships. And then those 5-star running backs have to go to other schools. Granted, they're not going to be going down to like the tiny schools like Kansas or anything, but it's just a trickle-down effect. Those guys will go down to, say, Iowa State, Penn State, that second, or I won't say Iowa State's second tier, but Penn State's in that second tier, and whatnot, and then the 4 stars that Penn State's getting, those would knock down because they're starting to get some of the 5 stars, and just kind of trickles down and just makes it better across college football. That's the only way you really change it. Other than that, it's going to be the same 4 or 5 teams. That's just the way it's going to be, people. I'm sorry. Last but not least, I know I've been rambling a lot, people, but the NIL. And people or players being able to, make money off their name and likeness. We'll see. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for them to make some money off, signing autographs and whatnot. But some of this stuff is just astronomical. Like, granted, it's projections. We don't know for sure what's happening, but Arch Manning, the nephew of Peyton and Eli, Cooper Manning's son, is he's this phenom quarterback that everybody's been talking about. And I'm not gonna lie, I've watched videos of this kid when he was like in 5th, 6th grade, and holy shit, this kid is real deal. So it's not like it's not warranted. But I saw projections that his freshman year he could make $10 million off his name and likeness. That's a little much. Not saying that the kid doesn't deserve it. He's a good player, and they do make a lot of money for the universities. I think they need to do a little bit better, make up some rules or something, some regulations on the access to the money. If he makes 10, like you're about to give a 17, 18-year-old kid $10 million. Granted, he comes from a great family of the Mannings who, they've made millions and millions and millions of dollars over, all of their careers, and they know how to handle it. But say if you, get a player from, didn't come from much, but he's just this like a ridiculous athlete, and he makes $4 or $5 million in his first year, and he doesn't he's never seen they never had that kind of money before. They don't know how to deal with it. And when you give a 17, 18-year-old kid that amount of money, I'm willing to bet they're not going to make the best decisions. The reason I say that, it's nothing against that kid, but when I was in college, shit, you gave me $100. I usually made some stupid decisions with that $100. I'm just saying. So I think they need to do something about, not that the kids don't get any money when they're in college, but have a cap of I'm just going to throw numbers out there, not saying it's right. Say they could do $75,000 a year that they can spend on whatever. Which, listen, at 17, 18-year-old kid, 19, 20-year-old kid, $75,000 when you're getting school paid for, you could live pretty damn well. And most of the time when you're that age, you also have roommates. So it's not like you're paying a fucking mortgage. You're probably living in an apartment or a rent house. So $75,000, you can do just fine. And then the rest of the money has to go into a trust that once you touch that trust, you can no longer play college sports. It's there, and you could have millions and millions of dollars. But the moment you dip into that money, you're done. You cannot play college sports anymore. You got to go do something else. Or something to that effect to try to offset all of this money going around. Like I said, it's the wild, wild west right now. The NCAA just threw this out there. And I think it's the right thing. Best part is we get college football, the video game back. I don't know who's not excited about that. The only shitty thing is we have to wait till 2023. But listen, at that point, I'm going to be 38. And so Jimmy and Ryan's age, because they old as fuck, beyond the point. But listen, I'll be playing the shit out of that video game because I love college football. I still play NCAA 2015 that I have on my Xbox 360 because it's a fun game. So that's the big plus. But with the NIL, I think it's a wild west. We don't have any regulations. I think that there's over time they will finalize a little bit more and kind of get some of these loopholes out of the way. That'll be better. But just right now, it's just it's pretty wild to see what the hell's going out there. So, with that, I'll kind of stop rambling about college football. I think Jimmy's got a couple of thoughts on baseball that he's got. So, Jimmy, why don't you give us a little bit about baseball?
We're now about 5 weeks left in the season, and the Giants still have not fallen off. I thought for sure at some point they were going to fall off. I thought it was going to be maybe right before the All Star break or maybe right after the All Star break, much like the Red Sox have been doing. Ross, I know you love that one. But overall, they have not fallen off, and it comes down to great pitching. They got great defense. Brandon Crawford, Gold Glover there at shortstop, and clutch hitting up and down the roster. They don't have guys that are like top of the stats when it comes down. They don't, and not to mention they just brought in Chris Bryan at third base, who's a strong third baseman, and we all know he's an MVP. He's a Rookie of the Year. He's a great hitter. And they're a team that could go really far into these playoffs. Um, let's see. Moving on, even with injuries to some of the top guys, Luis Robert, who was out for the season, I think Giolito had just come back from injury. The White Sox, and it was Eloy Jimenez was injured for a little while, but even with those guys out, they got pop all over that lineup and very good pitching. Lance Lynn is on top of his game. Again, Giolito. Their defense, or not their defense, their bullpen is very scary. Um, let's see. I got the Brewers are a quiet World Series contender. Nobody's talking about the Brewers. Three of their top five pitchers, three of the top five pitchers that are leading the entire league in ERA are Brewers starting pitchers. They get very good starting pitching. And when you got close personal friend of the podcast, Lorenzo Cain, covering the outfield, you've got defense on lock. They got defense everywhere, and they can still hit. And Yelich could eventually just go off. Yelich is a very good hitter. He's not having a last couple years, but he could still hit. There's no doubt about that. It's a fluke that he's not hitting, is what it is. Houston might be the best team in baseball, and they still suck. Tatis may be the future of the sport, but Shohei Ohtani needs to be the face of the sport. If Ohtani doesn't get AL MVP, then I call BS and the system is broken. Because what he's doing by being a strong pitcher and one of the best hitters, I think he's the best hitter in the American League. A lot of people would argue Vladdy Jr., but I think Ohtani is the best player, all-around player that we've ever seen in our lives. We haven't seen this since Babe Ruth. Like, this is old school baseball type stuff. And again, I said I'm a traditionalist, so I like history. And the closest thing we got to Babe Ruth right now is Shohei Ohtani, and he is so fun to watch. Let's see. Moving on, we are now in year 3 of the 13-year, $300 million contract for Bryce Harper in Philadelphia, and he's a legit National League MVP candidate. It's going to come down to the wire between him and Joey Votto, and with Tatis coming back, Tatis' first game back, he hits 2 dingers on his first game back. That's a 3-horse race, and it's going to be tight. I think it's probably going to ultimately end up being Fernando Tatis, just because right now he's the face of baseball, and that's the way the voters are going to go. But Bryce Harper should be getting a few votes when it comes down to MVP. His on-base percentage is, I believe, over 500 or around 450, which is unreal. His power surge is coming on. He didn't hit great a lot for power, but he's hitting extra base hits. His OSP plus is really high. It's just he's living up to his contract. It's not his fault that the rest of the team around him is not great. They probably won't even make the playoffs. They're one game. They got to win the NL East, because they're about 5-6 games back in the wild card. And if they don't win if they don't win the East, they're not making the playoffs. And it's mostly because of their bullpen, which has, right now, as of my checking of this one, I'm not sure if it's jumped or not, they have 22 blown saves. That's the most in Major League Baseball. And their ERA is ranked 23 out of 32 for their bullpen. Their bullpen is really bad and has been for a long time. So we'll see where they go. Now, the burning question, me being a Cleveland Indians fan, next year they will be known as the Cleveland Guardians. And just my thoughts on this one. Again, I am a traditionalist. I said that. But I'm okay with the name. Very similar. It's a change that was going to happen. There's nothing I can do about it. I was hoping they would pick something that was along the lines of the Native American, but not necessarily would be considered an insult. But I guess that's not going to be enough. So they're going Guardians. Again, I'm okay with the name. It is a reference to the Guardians that stand over their major bridge over the Cuyahoga River there. And to be honest with you, I didn't start following the team because of the name, but I did like the tradition. Um, I don't like the font that they've brought out. I hate it, in fact. They just need to stick with the script lettering. Right now, it's just says Cleveland in block letters, which is boring. But when it says Indians in script, I do love that. That's something that I wish would stay. They can do Guardians. They could do it in the script. That's fine. The new logo, hot garbage. Really bad. It looks like a beer league logo. Like if you're in a beer league and you saw that and your team name was the Guardians, that's dope as fuck. But I don't like it for a Major League Baseball team, for a professional sports team. It looks like somebody did it in Photoshop. It's really bad. They had a year and a half to come up with something, and that's what they came up with. And if you all know Cleveland sports, that's Cleveland sports for you. And what I'm seeing as a possibility for their unis, I hope will not end up being their uniforms because they're really bad. And from what I saw, that's what they're going to be, and they're really stupid, and I hate them. Now, what I said before about my idea of hoping they would stick with a Native American aspect, they could have went the Cleveland tribe. It's not overtly negative towards the Native American population. It still references the Native American population that was in, Northeast Ohio and Ohio in general, and not too far enough away from controversy. But apparently that's not far enough away from controversy, and I get it. Most professional teams are businesses now, and they could have been brave, but there it is again. Native Americans, Braves, jeez. Anyway, can't get away from it. But those are my thoughts. This is what we got so far. Hey, thanks for coming back. We're great. We're ready to be back and roaring and making our picks for the college football season coming up. We get a full college season football coming up. I get to watch more than 6 games of Ohio State, and I'm super excited about that. I know Ryan and Ross are super excited about watching their teams coming up this year. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
All right, thanks, Jim. Not gonna lie, I just let you have that one. I got nothing on baseball. So everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to me ramble for God knows how long and throwing Jimmy's little thoughts in there. Like I said, we're gonna try to get back onto a weekly podcast. Get Ryan on here and get his thoughts. Like I said, next week I think we're gonna look at doing an in-depth about Oklahoma, Penn State, and Ohio State. Kind of give all of our thoughts on those and where we think the seasons go. What best chances and worst chances, like what's the best and worst that could happen for those teams. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to get you guys our knowledge, or what we think is knowledge, and really it's just a shot in the dark. Let's get real for a second, people. So thank you for listening. This is Boom. I'm out, bitches.